Thank you for the invitation and privilege of attending the conference and being present at this time. I have 5 points that I want to make, and I will make more extended comments on 3 of them. The first is that more often than not, religious institutions and leaders speak and act on gay issues out of political and not religious considerations. Secondly, sexual ethics are not central to the Christian faith, but are often used as a weapon. Thirdly, the increase in religious and secular intolerance and fundamentalism, in my estimation, and not only in mine, is expected to continue and increase. Fourthly, though violence in the name of Jesus is frequent, the true spirit of Jesus creates community within and out of especially diversity and difference. And finally, I will spend most of my time on the final point, namely the difference between Roman Catholic and Protestant grounds for objecting to gay and lesbian persons and how they handle this problem overall. Let me just say something about the politics of homosexuality, that it's not religiously based, but has really as an undertow political considerations. The difficulty of changing large institutions, the need to accommodate a very conservative constituency, the need to accommodate the fact that a very large minority and perhaps even a majority of gay clergy, for example, in the Roman Catholic and the Anglican priesthood, are gay. The weight of tradition, which makes change very difficult, and the difficulty for anyone to step out of line in their organization. Sexual ethics are not central to the Christian faith, but are often used as a weapon. It's an easy weapon for repression, victimization, and control because of its emotional and emotive power. All serious interpretations of Christianity, though, will always point out that this is a peripheral and not a central issue. Just a few words about the increase in religious and secular intolerance and fundamentalism. You can see that, and I won't make a long issue of it, in the extremist politics that is rising in Europe, in extreme and violent Protestant fundamentalism, which is on the rise, in doctrinaire and archaic Roman Catholic positions on sexual issues, and the crisis since the 19th century of the modernization movement within Islam and the resulting fundamentalist backlash, which we all know about. The reasons for this increase in tolerance, and again I won't make a long issue of it, is the, let's call it existential anxiety from globalization, the breakdown of secularism and scientism, not science, but scientism, the loss of restraints on human violence by civil and religious traditions. Religious traditions have weakened appreciably, and this is one break to violence that has been removed, and civil communities aren't able to control it either. The re-entry of Islam into Europe and onto the world stage, and as always, when the pressure is on, the dangerous, the strange, and the different is always regarded as dangerous and perverse. And in times of fear and confusion, it's always a useful tool for scapegoating. And modern media and internet give marginal groups universal access to propagate their hate, fears, and simplistic solutions. I won't dwell on the spirit of Christianity. Let me just point out that the Church has a terrible history and it has to atone for that, and I don't know how that is going to come about. It isn't enough for the churches to somehow speak about the love of God or the love of Christ when its actions are in fact the opposite. But I won't dwell on this part of it. I just want to say, though, that it should be known that in Christian theology, there is no notion that people will ever think the same way, experience things in the same way, or have the same traditions. In fact, it's the opposite. The expectation is that these traditions, principles, and experiences will be completely, and as I underline, in principle, diverse and unreconcilable. But that doesn't make any problem for the idea of Christian, of the unity under one God. But I won't dwell on that, and nor on the true spirit of Christianity. Let me go to my final point. And that is on the difference between the Roman Catholic and Protestants on gay, lesbian, bisexual persons. They both have quite different grounds for objecting to gay and lesbian persons. They both rely on and interpret biblical texts. Both have a long history of ethical teaching and tradition that sets man-woman relations as the created norm. Constantly in the literature you hear phrases like clear and constant teaching of the Catholic Church in this area, and so on. But the two churches approach the issue of gay and lesbian and bisexual persons in quite distinct, different ways. And the reason I mention this, that it's very important when you discuss these issues with religious representatives, that you keep this in mind, because you must address it at the level at which they are analyzing and making decisions. So let me just say, what are the grounds for the Roman Catholic rejection of homosexuality? The Roman Catholic basis is natural law. Natural law means the God-created order of world, life, and human nature, which can be read as empirical truths and observations. You just have to look around and you will know what the natural law is. That's the reason for objection to contraception and so on. And gay lesbian persons represent a faulty nature, objectively so it is held, which must be corrected. And homosexual acts arise out of this faulty nature and are proscribed for that reason, because the basis is a fault of one's nature. But the point remains that if it is discovered empirically that homosexuality is not a disorder, but a natural, intrinsic fact of nature, then a correction will have to be made, quite obviously, in the Church's understanding of human nature and its interpretation of anthropology, and, of course, of homosexuality. Now, the interesting fact is that such a recognition of the nature, and it's called the homosexual inclination, has already been made by the Roman Catholic Church. It's reflected in quite a number of statements that the Roman Catholic Church has made in the 90s and in the 2000s. Although the Church now appears to accept that homosexuality itself is a, albeit curious, intrinsic fact of nature, it continues to maintain, rather curiously, that acts based on this natural phenomenon are nevertheless intrinsically evil. This is a contradictory position. just by the way, the Church is also, the Roman Catholic Church has condemned, as have all denominations, the unjust discrimination against gay people. But if a recognition of the intrinsic nature of homosexuality has already been made, why is there no change in the acceptance of gay lesbian persons and acts by the Roman Catholic hierarchy and the teaching magisterium of the Church? The reason is because the Church is not yet ready for the full and honest discussion which this new understanding now requires. There's a deliberately fostered ambiguity, and I want to add on my own accord, hypocrisy, at many levels, to hold off the religious and political repercussions that will follow from being fully open about its position and adopting a fully compatible and logical position on homosexuality. Now, the Protestant grounds for rejecting of homosexuality is not based on empirical facts out there, as it is in the case of the Roman Catholic Church, but on revelation, on the Bible. For Protestants, no amount of proof, scientific, sociological, psychological, or any other, count as a reason for changing a position. They do not. A change of position must come from a new revelation, that is, a new interpretation of biblical facts, of biblical texts. Such interpretations have, of course, been given and are accepted by many Protestant churches, by many teachers, by numerous publications. But then why are they not accepted by all Protestants? Well, we've already heard from the previous speaker that speakers that Protestants do not have one centralized authority for reading their texts. Each jurisdiction goes its own way. And then I come to my final three thoughts. I have discovered in my association with the gay problem in Latvia, with Mars Sans, with the Pride actions and the resulting removal of myself from the clergy lists of the Latvian, of the Church of the Lutheran Church of Latvia, although I'm still a pastor of the Latvian Lutheran Church, that the enemy of truth is not the noise of those who oppose the truth, but the silence of those who know the truth, but dare not speak it. And Nietzsche had it right. Of necessity, the party man becomes a liar. That's not only in religion, but everywhere else, of course. And I find it always helpful that we ask whether differences are a threat or a discovery, a surprise, and perhaps even a joy. And finally, in the face of diversity, one needs humility. And humility is the ability to laugh at ourselves, at our curious, strange, different, completely unexpected ways and attitudes and notions. And laughter quickly makes all human differences relative, as we know from any number of wonderful comedians. Thank you.